My name is Asha, and I am a licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Texas and in Missouri. Welcome to another episode of Post Grad with Asha NCE edition. This video will be the start of me discussing theories and key stakeholders in the development of psychology with a hint of sample questions at the end. This video will focus on Ivan Pavlov. So who is Ivan Pavlov? Ivan Pavlov is a physiologist and a psychologist who won a Nobel Peace Prize in 1904. He introduced classical conditioning and made many contributions to behavioral psychology. A lesser known fact about Pavlov is that he initially became interested in studying the digestion system or digestive system because he wanted to explore the physiology of the digestive process. His famous experiment with dogs and salivation were a byproduct of his research into the digestive system, not the main focus. Pavlov's research significantly impacted psychology and education, especially in the understanding of how behaviors can be continued through associative learning. All right, so what is classical conditioning? So classical conditioning is a learning process that occurs through associations between an environmental stimulus and a naturally occurring stimulus. So learning through association, when it comes to learning through association, Pavlov believed that much of learning involves forming associations between stimuli. His work showed that these associations could be established and modified through a conditioning process. He was more so interested in how automatic responses or automatic physiological responses could be influenced and changed by external stimuli, highlighting the interplay between environment and behavior. Hence, why he used the bell, salivation, and a dog, and food. All right. So in this next slide, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about how to remember which part is a natural occurring stimuli or a unconditioned stimulus, and then we'll get into conditioned stimulus. So what are the components of classical conditioning? So there are 4 main components, all right? So the 4 main components include an unconditioned stimulus, an unconditioned response, and a conditioned stimulus and a conditioned response. All right. So I'm going to break down each of these, and then we're going to kind of break down this diagram a little bit more. So unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that naturally triggers a response. So when you think of unconditioned stimulus, think food. It don't matter what time of day, when you smell food, you're going to have some type of stimulatory response, whether it's your stomach will stop growling because you smell food, or it might start growling more. Your, salivary glands may start to produce more saliva, or you might end up in a situation where you're going to go look for the food because you're trying to figure out what they're cooking, right? So unconditioned, think, as long as it's food, nothing else has to be done. As long as it smells good, as long as it looks like it's going to be good, it's going to create some type of response in you off GP. That's the best way for me to describe that. All right, so unconditioned response. This is a natural reaction to the unconditioned stimulus. So remember when I mentioned as long as there's food, you're going to respond. So think, if I'm hungry or if there's food, my mouth is going to water, especially like if you think about eating something citrusy or smelling something citrusy and it's put right before your nose, right before you eat it, or you put it in your mouth for the first time, some type of response is going to happen that you have no control over, which is probably going to be the salivation for you, or your stomach is going to stop growling because there's food in front of you, or it's going to growl more because there's food by you and you haven't put it in your body. I don't know if you want to remember it by a natural resource and natural response. So a natural resource in the animal kingdom for, let's say, lions are going to be smaller animals. So that's an unconditioned stimulus. It's food to the lions. The natural stimulus is that it's hunt time. We're going to hunt for this food that we see. And we could let it be, even though we see that it's food, but our job is to secure that food or to bring in those nutrients. So our body is going to go into whatever type of response it needs to go into in order for us to access that thing that is stimulating us right now. So we're going to naturally have a response. Again, for the sake of this, think food is something that's natural occurring. Food is something you can, could pick from a tree. You can pick strawberries off a plant and it's just there, right? Stimulus or an unconditioned response would be when you put that strawberry by your nose, or if it's nearby, or if you're looking at it and your mouth just starts watering, or you know how that little sting come in the side, that's a natural response. You don't control that. It's a natural response to your body. So it's an unconditioned response. All right, so I'm gonna stop beating a dead horse. So let's go into conditioned stimulus. So conditioned stimulus is a previously neutral stimulus that after association with the unconditioned stimulus triggers a response. So that's where the bell comes into play. So for example, here in Texas, we have this place called Ponchos. If you know, you know. All right, so with Ponchos, there's this little thing that they do where there's like this little flag. If you raise the flag, that tells the waiter or the waitress that you want more sopapillas. And so you can look at that as a conditioned response. So raising a flag in a natural environment, it doesn't typically evoke anything in anybody. But at Ponchos, raising that flag means bring me some more sopapillas. It's enough honey on the table. I'm ready to eat. So the natural response or the unconditioned response would be the raising of the flag. Or in the case of this classical conditioning, it would be the bell letting you know the food is ready. Or, or it's telling the waiters, if we use Ponchos continuously, it's telling the waiter like, oh, there's a flag. They want more sopapillas. I don't have to raise my hand. I don't have to wave the waiter down. That's a conditioned stimulus because that is what is learned and that is the culture of that restaurant. So conditioned stimulus, raising that flag, letting you know, hey, you need to come over here and stimulate my stomach by bringing me sopapillas, right? All right. So the conditioned response is a learned response to the conditioned stimulus. So as I mentioned before, raising a flag wouldn't mean anything to anybody in any other place on earth, right? Outside of the political side of it. Raising a flag in a restaurant, if you've never been to the restaurant, it wouldn't mean anything to you if you weren't taught that you need to raise the flag to get the waiter to come over to bring you more sopapillas. So again, the conditioned stimulus would be raising the flag. The conditioned response would be the waiter or the waitress bringing you more sopapillas, okay? So let's go into this diagram a little bit more. And then once we're done with the diagram, we'll hop in our question and onto our 3 questions. I think we got 3 or 4. I can't remember. Anyway, so in this diagram, remember, unconditioned means natural. Unconditioned, a natural of anything. The stimulus itself is natural or the response itself is natural. So for this video, before learning classical conditioning, there was only unconditioned stimulus and unconditioned response. While you're being conditioned, a neutral stimulus is introduced. So in the case of this diagram, it is going to be the whistle. In the case of Ponchos, it is going to be the flag. Alrighty. So I'm going to blow this whistle and nothing's going to happen. Or I'm going to raise this flag and nothing's going to happen before I start teaching you what I want you to do with this whistle, right? So now we're going to bring the whistle and the food together, or we're going to bring this flag and the sopapillas together. So I'm going to blow the whistle with the food and you're going to start to have salivation. Now, the whistle still doesn't mean anything to you just now, but I'm teaching you that when I blow this whistle, that means food is here and it's time for you to eat, and your salivary glands are going to start producing more saliva. That's what that means in this particular diagram or image. Now, after you've been conditioned, when I blow the whistle, you're going to produce more saliva off GP, remember. So before conditioning, there's only 2 things, US and UR, unconditioned stimulus and unconditioned response. And when you think about those things, if you can't think of nothing else, Unconditioned means untouched, untamed, unprocessed, it's natural. There's nothing added to it. Now, on a base level, nothing's added to it. Now, if you're cooking food, you're probably adding things. But for the sake of what we're talking about, unconditioned means a natural thing. Nothing is added to it. There's no training. There are no supports. I'm just going to bring this food and my dog's going to start producing saliva. All right, now I'm going to start blowing this whistle. Now we're going to start getting into conditioning. So before conditioning, a whistle doesn't mean anything to my dog. I'm just going to blow. Dog's not going to do nothing. I'm going to blow. Dog's not going to do anything. Now we're going to get into conditioning, where now we're starting to include conditioned stimulus and conditioned response. So I'm going to blow this whistle and bring out the food. Food. Now you're going to start to salivate. Now I'm going to remove the food and I'm going to blow the whistle. And guess what? You're going to continue to salivate and you're going to continue to want more food, even though that food isn't present, because I've taught you or I've conditioned you to believe that anytime I blow this whistle, there will be food. All right. So conditioned means we done put in some work into it. We done repaired some things. We done fixed some things. We done taught you to believe that anytime this thing is here, this thing is going to be, or anytime I do this thing is going to be here or present so that natural response can occur. Okay. Or that conditioned response can occur. All right. So we went from untamed, untouched, unconditioned to now we're conditioned. Okay. All right. So let's get into these questions. All right. So what is the primary concept demonstrated in Pavlov's dog experiments? Okay. All right. Classical conditioning, of course. All righty. So this theory involves learning through the association of stimuli. Pavlov's experiment with dogs showed a neutral stimulus or an unconditioned, a neutral stimulus could be conditioned or could be associated with an unconditioned stimulus like food. So in operant conditioning, social learning theory, or cognitive dissonance, they're different theories and they're not associated with Pavlov. So if you see operant conditioning, social learning theory, or cognitive dissonance, has nothing to do with Pavlov. All right. So in Pavlov's experience, what does the unconditioned stimulus represent? So remember, unconditioned, untamed, untouched. So I'm going to pause for 10 seconds. All right, it is going to be the food, the unconditioned stimulus. Remember, if I bring you something that's unnatural, untamed, something that is naturally occurring like food, that is a stimulant, it's going to cause you to salivate. So food is going to be the unconditioned stimulus. Food is going to always be a stimulus. Food stimulates energy. Food stimulates a reduction in hunger. Food stimulates your salivary glands to keep going or to produce more saliva. So that is what it is. The food is the unconditioned stimulus because it naturally causes the dogs to salivate. The bell, which initially had no effect, is the neutral stimulus. The salivation is going to be the unconditioned response, and the neutral stimulus was the bell. So y'all see how that neutral stimulus and a bell, they technically go together, so those two are wrong. You can't have two right answers. And salivation is the response of seeing the food. All right, which of the following best describes the conditioned response in Pavlov's experiences? All right. The conditioned response means you were trained to respond this way. Salivation is a response to the bell because it is now your new response. So it's conditioned new or same response, but new stimulant. So the new stimulant is going to cause a conditioned response. Okay. Remember, the presentation of the food is an unconditioned stimulant. The sound of the bell is the neutral stimulus. Sorry. And salivation in response to the food is an unconditioned response. Okay, so I hope those things settle in, and just visualize that diagram as you continue to study for your exam. But this is the easiest thing you're going to have on the test, I would say, outside of ethics. And as long as you know the difference between the vocabulary words and how they pair to the image, again, unconditioned stimulus is food. Unconditioned response is salivation to the unconditioned stimulus or the food. Conditioned stimulus is the pairing of the neutral stimulus to the unconditioned stimulus to create a new stimulatory experience for a now new conditioned response to this new stimulus. Okay? All right. So last question. How did Pavlov's work influence the field of psychology? And I'll give you 10 seconds. All right. B as in boy, by establishing behaviorism as a major psychological perspective. So Pavlov's work with classical conditioning had a significant impact on the field of psychology, particularly the development and establishment of behaviorism. Behaviorism is a psychological perspective that focuses on observable behaviors and the ways that they are learned through interaction with the behavior rather than introspection or in the internal mental process. So remember, learning through associations is connected to Pavlov. Pavlov's research provided a scientific basis for understanding how behaviors could be conditioned and modified through associations between stimuli. So A, by introducing the concept of introspection is wrong because it involves examining one's own thoughts, feelings, and it is associated with early psychologists like Wilhelm Wundt and not Pavlov's. Developing cognitive psychology is incorrect because it studies the mental process in which perception, memory, and problem solving developed later and was influenced by Piaget and Neisser, Neisser, I think is how you spell it. Alrighty, and then D, by solely focusing on physiological responses is also incorrect because while Pavlov's experiences were grounded in physiological responses, his broader impact was behaviorism in understanding learning processes, not just a physiological response. Pavlov's contributions laid out the groundwork for behaviorism, a major psychological approach that emphasizes the role of the environment and learning in shaping behavior. All right, y'all, that's it for Post Grad with Asha NCE edition. I'm trying to get shorter and shorter with these videos, so this video should be right at 20 minutes, but we should be good to go. Please leave a comment if you have any questions about the information that is being presented. Please let me know. And as a reminder, I don't endorse any NCE study materials. My job is to just teach the information and support you in getting to a passing score on the NCE. Again, I can't guarantee that, but I can only give you tips and tools. So looking forward to seeing you in the next video, and good luck in your studies.